He was a strong vigilant, but during the day, he acted like a pathetic nerd who hangs out with losers. One day, he goes to a destroyed city with his sister where he finds an immortal vampire queen, and, in the end, he manages to rizz up more girls than any protagonist in anime history. In a mansion, Beta announces that since the incident at the Bushin Festival, the cult of Diablos in the Migr Kingdom has shown no signs of conspicuous activity, and the smaller sects were at a standstill. Gamma tells Cid it is going exactly as they planned, and Epsilon adds that they can set their sights forward and focus their main efforts on the situation in the Oriana Kingdom. Ida reports that the flow of funds going into the lawless city has increased, and Epsilon explains that it's a giant slum where the evil, wealth and power of the world converge, so any tensions could have an immeasurable effect on the rest of society. Cid declares that he will handle this matter. The girls ask if he intends to go there alone, so he tells them to not be afraid since the moon has turned red. They wish him the best of luck and bow overdramatically as Cid remarks that it's literally just a red moon and not a big deal. Two men arrive at the Crimson Tower, ruled by the Blood Queen, one of the three rulers of the lawless city. A wild-looking man declares that they are not worthy of passing through this gate since the only ones permitted are servants or guests of the Blood Queen. The men cheerily say they're powerful warriors here to hunt the Blood Queen. Hearing this, the man starts chuckling and says it's always really amusing to find even bigger fools than him. He shows them his chopped-off arm and says this is what happens to the likes of them who dare to challenge the Blood Queen, revealing that he lost his arm and is now kept here as a pathetic watchdog on a leash.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
He says he was once known as the White Devil, a dangerous criminal, but here, he's nothing but a lowly gatekeeper who rips apart idiots like them. Later in the lawless city, Cid remarks that this is perfect since the lawless city is even more of a dump than he imagined. However, Claire tells him to stop gawking as she drags him through the streets. He remarks that he, Kajino Minoru, was following the road to become the Eminence in Shadow when it seemed like his journey came to an abrupt end. However, a lot of different stuff happened and now here we are. His sister, Claire Kejino, won the Bushin Festival Championship, so he used his connections with Gamma to get her a fancy dinner. Cid's getting freaky here. However, Claire revealed that she was going to the lawless city to exterminate vampires and decided to bring him out of consideration for his future. Presently, she says she'll pray open a spot for him in Migr's Night Order after he graduates if he stays behind her and does as she says. Cid inwardly admits he hasn't really considered what he'll do after graduating since she'll inherit the estate out in the boondocks. He remarks that he doesn't care what job he's put in as long as he can do what he wants. Claire tells him to stop trying to hide the fact that he just hasn't thought about it and insists that it's not fine. A shopkeeper asks Claire to check out his new stock of new pets, and Cid sees that he's referring to male slaves. As the man tries to sell the slaves to Claire, Cid remarks that these guys look kind of similar. Later, Cid gets out of the inn for a moment and the men keep trying to pickpocket him, but he easily takes his stuff back as well as their wallets, remarking that it's a dog-eat-dog world, but he still can't believe he's making bank just by taking a stroll. As he's walking, he notices some men beating up a Gaul and sees that they must be punching bags around here, which is what he'd expect from a town drenched in blood and slaughter. The red moon appears in the sky and Cid notices a wave of magical energy spread in the town. The Gaul suddenly gets up and bites one of them, turning him into a Gaul as well. Cid says they'll just keep multiplying if he doesn't do anything, so wonders what act he should put up here. He decides to let things get a bit out of hand before stepping in, but a girl suddenly slashes through the Gauls' heads and introduces herself as Mary, the ancient vampire hunter. At the inn, Claire annoyingly sees that Cid isn't here and asks a man if he's seen a boy with black hair. In the pleasure district, two boys excitedly get ready, but ghouls suddenly appear behind them. Meanwhile, in a room, a girl wonders what's happening outside while she's trying to wallow in her misery. A gullish man slowly walks towards her, but Cid instantly cuts through him and tells her to run if she values her life because the frenzy has begun. She asks what his name is, so he introduces himself as Shadow, repeats the lines and swiftly disappears. A woman hurriedly asks the girl, Marie, if she's okay and tells her that Shadow is the evil mastermind who had a field day beating up the corrupt clergy and is at least as dangerous as any of the rulers of this city. However, Marie mutters that he didn't seem like a bad man and quickly gets up, informing the woman that she's getting out of this town and thanking Shadow because just seeing a dude is enough to make you rethink your life choices. In her room at the inn, Claire tearfully apologizes to Cid for bringing to this awful town, but Mary appears behind her and says she met a man fitting her description a while back. She says she saw one boy smiling in front of the gulls, but Claire doesn't think that's him, so Mary says she saw another one as he was being taken away by the followers of the Blood Queen. She adds that he was taken to the Crimson Tower, the Blood Queen's castle, and the vampires wish to offer him as a sacrifice. She reveals that the Blood Queen has been asleep for 1,000 years, but they've kept that a secret and waited for the night that would give the vampires tremendous powers. The night the red moon would rise again. Claire suggests that since both their targets are the same, they should partner with each other, so she agrees and they start running. Things are getting a bit awkward here. As people around the city are trying to stop the goals, Sid effortlessly cuts through them and repeats the same lines. In the tower, a man says takeover of the city is going as planned, but they're meeting unexpected resistance in certain locations. Another guy mutters that they know who's behind that: Yukim, the spirit fox, ruler of the White Tower, and Juggernaut, the tyrant ruler of the Black Tower, but they'll let them play their games since they'll meet their end as soon as the Blood Queen is revived. However, his assistant informs him that there's someone else. As Yukim and Juggernaut are fighting Sid, hovering in the air in front of the moon remarks that someone somewhere might be trying to spin up a new tale, but he does not change. He only continues on his quest to become the ultimate cringe lord, aka the Eminence in Shadow. He lands in front of Juggernaut and Yukim and declares that he is Shadow. The White Devil watches Juggernaut and Yukim fighting and admits he could never hope to defeat them, even if he gave his absolute all, but Shadow suddenly lands in front of them. Juggernaut recognizes him as the boss of the Jang who wiped the floor with the snooty priests. He breaks the door to the tower and enters it as Yukim says she hopes they can be on friendly terms as well since Shadow saved some of her girls in the district. The White Devil notices that Shadow is a human and believes he's weaker than him, so he pounces forward to kill him, but Shadow instant cuts his body into several pieces. Andy repeats that the moon is red. Bro's really ripping off every cool line. As Beta is reading a book in the library, she wonders how the cult found the necessary knowledge to harness the demon's power. Claire and Mary suddenly crash, and seeing which Beta wonders what she should do since she's supposed to clear all witnesses, but she doesn't think she can do that. She recognizes Claire and Marie says she seems human and they don't have the time to fight unnecessary battles. Beta introduces herself and says she was doing research on the possessed.
Oh shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper.
She reveals that she needs the blood of a progenitor vampire to confirm her hypothesis. Mary doesn't believe her, but Beta says she will stay out of their way. Claire tells Mary they don't have time and won't be able to save her brother if they take too long, catching Beta off guard. Number 6066 alarmingly asks if that's true, but Beta tells her to keep quiet, so Claire and Mary continue on their way. Beta reminds the girls that their mission is only to obtain the sample, since Lord Shadow will be the one who deals with the Blood Queen and will eliminate all problems, including the issues with the sacrifice. As Claire and Mary make their way through the tower, Claire says she was acting strange in front of Beta, almost as if she was taking the vampire's side, and asks what she's really after, so Mary says she's only after the Blood Queen. Claire tries to ask a bit more, but Mary says everyone has secrets and tells her to not pry before a wall in front of them is suddenly destroyed. Hiding behind a pillar, they watch Juggernaut wildly defeat the vampires, and Mary tells Claire one of the most powerful in Lola City, so they should wait until he's gone and try avoiding a fight here. However, Juggernaut suddenly appears in front of them. He punches Claire away before attacking Mary. Claire wearily gets up, muttering that he's the second person who's ever managed to hit her in the face. She shockingly sees that Mary has fatal injuries and hurriedly tries to heal her, but Mary says it's fine and asks her to let her suck her blood for a moment. She unexpectedly kisses Claire and sucks her blood, which heals all her injuries, surprising Claire, who seemed to be having a really good time. Okay, this and I might actually be peak. She starts fighting Juggernaut, but admits it's been so long that the blood isn't assimilating. As Juggernaut rushes forward and is about to finish them off, Claire inwardly apologizes to Sid, but Shadow suddenly kicks Juggernaut away and he flies out of the tower, questioning what he's doing. Mary apologizes to Claire for taking her blood, but Claire mutters that her secret is that she's a vampire, so Mary decides to tell her everything. She explains that over 1,000 years ago, it was the golden age for vampires, but times changed as humans learnt the weakness of vampires and the hunters became the hunted. During that time, the Blood Queen, Lady Elizabeth, was living among humans and gave up on drinking blood since she wanted to live in harmony. As her subject, Mary followed her example, so they gradually lost their powers but gained nothing in return. The ability to live under the light of the sun was gained by them, and they were able to live in a beautiful world filled with light, but that wasn't the case for Elizabeth, since the maddening thirst never left her, and when sunlight struck her body, it would burn hideously. Despite this, Elizabeth wanted to build a haven where humans and vampires could live together in happiness. However, then came the night once in 1,000 years when the red moon rose in the sky. Elizabeth was starving for blood, and Crimson gave her a single drop, after which her frenzy lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and the haven disappeared into a pile of rubble, with the 3 kingdoms having suffered catastrophic damage. Mary survived by lapping up the blood of the dead and went after Elizabeth, but by the time she was reunited with her, it was all over. Elizabeth declared that a mistake like this could never be repeated and stabbed herself in the heart. If she had been an ordinary vampire, She would have disintegrated immediately, but the queen never turned to ash, so all Mary could do was watch over her eternal slumber instead of just actually killing her. However, immediately after that, Crimson and his followers took Elizabeth from Mary, choosing to spare her life in the hope that she would join them by the next night. 1,000 years later, and now, he's attempting to use Elizabeth again for his ambition. Claire admits she's no better than her, revealing that she might be possessed and could one day become a monster, so she hopes she could help her brother achieve something before that happened and brought him here. She questions how she would apologize if anything happened to him. She asks Mary if the Haven can't be built again, but she says she doesn't want to repeat that same mistake, and she believes Elizabeth wants her final rest. However, Claire says it's too sad to let it end this way and suggests that they kick Crimson's butt and get Elizabeth back, so Mary thanks her and they shake hands. Sid excitedly enters the treasury and starts examining all the gold there before reminding himself that he has a boss battle coming up, and he's been showing up fashionably late so far, and that's getting old. He decides to go with a flashy entry this time, while Crimson tells Elizabeth Skeleton that she is still beautiful and asks her to return to life as he initiates the ceremony. However, Sid suddenly attacks him with a gigantic explosion, chopping his head off, and once again repeats his lines. Sid is surprised to see that the final boss isn't here either and wonders if this could be one of those events that has a focus on group battles instead. He decides to check underground just in case before going home with the gold. On the roof, Claire and Mary hurriedly look around for Sid, but Claire is suddenly stabbed by Elizabeth, who brings her body closer and starts sucking her blood. However, Beta swiftly cuts off her neck and makes her head explode, while the other members save Claire. They inform Beta that Claire is still breathing by first aid won't be enough, as Beta sees that they won't be able to leave right now since their master hasn't revealed himself and probably has some higher priority, a grand purpose he must achieve first. She decides to finish this quickly and asks 6064 to keep taking care of Claire and tells 6066 to cover her as she rushes towards Elizabeth.
Okay.
As they're fighting Elizabeth, Mary mutters that it's no use since they are strong, but her lady has always been a slow riser due to low blood pressure. Juggernaut and Yukim arrive as well, but Elizabeth suddenly rains down a barrage of attacks on them all, and they're left wounded. Beta warily says Elizabeth has expended all her magical energy, but still isn't showing any signs of slowing down, so she's taking their blood to heal herself and make herself even more powerful. Beta is shocked to see that Elizabeth is controlling the blood of the demon. As the fungi start rapidly increasing on Claire's body, she suddenly wakes up in the nurse's office where a girl asks if she's heard of evolution. She tells Claire that the possessed and progenitor vampire blood is trying to adapt inside of her, and she has the right constitution, but she doesn't know how to control it, which makes it even more tragic. Thus, the blood in her body has gone berserk. She sees that it's time and starts leaving. Signs appear on Claire's hand, so the girl says those will teach her how to use her powers and introduces herself as Aurora before saying she is helping her because she is Shadows. Why is everyone in this universe freaky? Claire suddenly gets up and has changed her appearance, but she says it's the same as what Shadow does since she can alternate between different looks. She suddenly stops Elizabeth's blood attacks in mid-air and redirects them towards Elizabeth before declaring that she will show them the most almighty power in the world as a bonus. However, as she's about to use a spell, she realizes this body can't handle it and mutters that this is enough since she was only buying time until he arrived. She reverts to Claire as Shadow appears in front of them and declares that the hour of awakening has arrived. As he's fighting Elizabeth, Beta wonders why he's taking the time to entertain these blows when he's already within striking range and could take her out in a single attack. However, she suddenly realizes he's shielding them from the onslaught, knowing they're helpless against her. She happily keeps praising Shadow as he mutters that he can't afford to lose a single one, like he's playing Subway Surfers. She thinks he's talking about them when he's actually referring to the coins he's hidden using his ability. Shadow and Elizabeth start dueling in the air. As they're in the air, he tells Elizabeth today's game has gone on long enough, so she asks for his name. He says his name is Recovery Atomic and swiftly defeats her. Later, Juggernaut thinks it'd be fun to go pick a fight with Shadow. The next morning, as Claire and Mary say goodbye to each other, Sid remarks that there are afflictions out there that can't be cured, and his sister has got it bad, but he can't dismiss her pain because all children have walked the path at some point. Claire confesses to Sid that special powers have taken root in her left hand, and she has to solve the mystery of these powers, but Sid says he knows she'll be fine, and no matter what path he follows, he'll be behind her all the way. As the train starts moving, she asks him if he knows about Shadow, but doesn't say anything else, so Sid remarks that she has all kinds of trials and tribulation ahead of her. He admits this event ended well, but he was sadly not able to recover all the coins, and there are only 500 left out of the 3,000 he was supposed to have. However, he says there are 2 towers still standing and the Lawless City will stay here, so he can just come back here whenever he's in financial strain. A group of bandits intimidate some girls and tell them a well-respected man, Garter, is behind them, declaring that everyone has a bad side. However, the girls say there's no use in telling them something they already know, as the rest of Shadow Garden appears behind the man and takes them out. Alpha says the underworld players connected to the cult should start to show themselves now, and sees that the war is about to begin. At school, Gally and Emo show Sid the new clothes they brought that will make women swoon over them, but they realize they're all just rip-offs because NPCs like them always get scammed. Sid remarks that everything he's wearing is like a knock-off from his past life and believes this was Alpha's doing, but he says this is all going to end today and declares he's going to reclaim what's his, all of it. Later, he dresses up as a super-secret elite agent. Yuki meets Shadow, but he says he's forsaken that name, so she remembers that he's John Smith now and admits it is truly heartening to have him kindly joining his ranks. She reveals that Garter recently called a meeting of the major corporate alliance about strengthening their measures against Mitsugashi. She tells Shadow they will need him to take action, but warns that behind the major corporate alliance, he'll find Hem, the underworld swordsman who rose above Garter and took control of the MCA, getting the Sword Devil. As Shadow is leaving the carriage, she says she looks forward to seeing who will remain standing in the end. Shadow declares that he will destroy it all and then build it up again. The next day, Sid remarks that Alpha and the girls have gone too far since they're selling exclusive products with no concern for local distributors and have made enemies of the big corporations as well as the downtown shopping district. Thus, they will crush Mitsugoshi for him, and he will crush them in turn by using the massive amounts of capital to move to a brand new market and set up a new corporation. Imu shows him that Mitsugoshi and MCA have their own banks and currency too, surprising Sid, who remembers telling girls some random facts he saw in a documentary about banks. He's surprised to see that the girls established their own bank and managed to issue their own currency with just that. Sid notices that the design of the MEHA bank's note is much cruder and simpler, so he suddenly realizes something and starts running as Amo chases after him. Later, Sid tells Yukim that the bank is using the coins deposited at their vaults as collateral to lend out even more money. The bank met the demand of the merchants by supplying paper money, which spread like wildfire, further obscuring the currency's true value. Through this, Mitsugashi gained exponential profits by reaping the rewards of the interest. He points out that the MCA notes are much simpler in design, so they'd be easy to fake, and that way, they can make a fortune in counterfeit bills. She mutters that if they start doing this on a large scale, people would start dotting their own wallets and rush to exchange them for gold so they can make their profit through that. After intimidating her a bit, Shadow agrees and leaves the carriage as she realizes he was trying to test her sincerity. As Sid is eating at a restaurant, he sees Delta sitting beside him on the ground and wonders what she's doing. He starts carrying her and asks what she's doing in the capital, so she says she was hunting because Alpha told her to. She reveals that she's been hunting bandits. She asks if he wants to hunt with her, but he reminds her that Alpha would want to see her, but she tearfully says she wants to do the bandit hunt. Garter tells Getten that Mitsugoshi's private forces are stronger than expected, so he says he'll send the Clovers next, the elite assassins he handpicked himself, so that they can find Mitsugashi's secrets. As Delta is wildly slashing through the bandits, Sid collects the money, but one guy suddenly stops Delta and says he's her brother, Zabra, and calls her Sarah. He asks her to let him go since he's working for the Great Getten right now, but she instantly stabs him through his chest and says she doesn't want a weak sibling. Sid asks if she's sure that's okay, so she reveals that her dad is chief of the clan with lots of lovers and thousands of children, so Sid understands that it won't matter to him much then. Her dad is the true Giga Chad of this story. Delta suggests that he should become their next chief, but he mutters that that's not happening. Meanwhile, Garter informs Getten that Zabra has also been defeated and admits their numbers have practically been reduced to nothing these last few months, so it could affect the personnel running their enterprises if this keeps going. He's about to suggest something, but Getten reminds him of what his purpose is, to only follow his orders. He gets up, saying Zabra was the weakest of the Clovers, so he should summon the three that are left to strengthen their offense against Mitsugashi and take their trade secrets. He admits they're much stronger than he'd thought and understands why the cult labeled them a threat. Gamma tells Alpha that they are succeeding in minimizing the attacks against their transport trains as well as dominating the marketplace, while the MCA lacks the wisdom of the shadows, so they will be crushed under the weight of their own ambition. They decide to refrain from any brash behavior that could get people to link Mitsugashi and Shadow Garden before they're informed that they have guests. Gamma decides to handle it, and Alpha sends two others with her. As the three Clover assassins get ready to go in and find a woman named Luna, Gamma smilingly approaches them and introduces herself. Her two guards instantly take down two of the Clovers, but the remaining man declares that no one who has engaged him in battle has come out unscathed. He manages to land hits on Gamma, but they don't affect her at all, and he's shocked by how easily she recognizes his fighting style. However, she keeps using magic energy excessively, so he realizes she's an amateur. Gamma remembers how Sid told her that her stats were ridiculously high, so she should just use as much magic energy as possible and keep hacking away, so she's just using an old video game strategy. Presently, as Gamma continues destroying the corridor around them, the man is shocked by her power level. When he sees the two unconscious Clovers, he hurriedly decides to run away, but Gamma throws her stick towards him and it accidentally gets lodged in his neck, causing it to explode and take him out. Later, Getten mutters that he would have liked to use some of the children, but the cult is running low on resources as well. However, this is exactly why this is the perfect opportunity for him to demonstrate his power. The MCA is nothing but a disposable pawn, so he only needs them to stay afloat for a while longer as he makes his preparations. After practicing with Sid for a bit, Alexiad mutters that this isn't enough and she needs more power on top of all the other things she's lacking, and since while they lead their everyday lives, the world keeps moving forward, and if she doesn't move with it, she'll be left behind. She says being so carefree must be nice and sincerely hopes he stays that way. As Sid, dressed as John Smith, is sitting at a stall, a girl sits next to him and informs him that production is complete. Later, Yukim shows John how their entire production is done and asks what he thinks of the final product, since she believes it's quite good. John is easily able to tell the minute differences, but he's surprised to see that the one he thought was fake was actually real. He says they surpassed it to such a degree that it's better than the original one, but says they won't need to start working on it from scratch since no one else will be able to tell the difference. She says it is up to him to handle the situation after production is complete, but Getten is hers, revealing that he took her mother, her friends, and her entire village from her, so it's her turn to steal everything from him. Gamma informs Alpha that counterfeit bills are bills in the market, but they haven't determined where they're coming from, and the MCA don't seem to have realized it yet. Surprised, Alpha wonders if it was MCA's plan to bring about a paper downfall, even though it would result in them losing as well. She tells Gamma that finding out where these are coming from is their top priority, so she agrees. Upon learning about the counterfeit bill, Getten orders Garter to find out where it came from and remarks that if the world were to learn of its existence, every citizen would be harboring doubts and will fear that even the paper in their own wallets is nothing more than paper. He remarks that this is why they had been preparing to circulate their own counterfeit bills to bankrupt the MCA in Mitsugashi. That was the mission given to him by the cult. However, the plan wasn't supposed to go into effect until after they had recovered all the cult assets hidden in the MCA, and it should take time to find and retrieve them. If they sit back and watch as the counterfeit bills go into circulation, the cult could end up losing enormous amounts of money, so he frustratingly wonders what's happening. Shadow Garden agents infiltrate the train they believe is carrying the money, but two of them are suddenly caught in a trap as John Smith asks if he can see their tickets. The agents realize the thread binding them is unbreakable and magically reinforced, so 666, who is the only one who wasn't trapped, asks who he is. She rushes forward to attack him, but John swiftly traps her too, and says she's too inexperienced to risk it all on a single attack, even if she made the correct choice by eliminating the distance between them. He says he knew they would be the first to figure it out, but this is too soon, so he swiftly throws them out the train window like trash. As they land, 6066 wants to go after him again, but her leader says it's over since if they go after him without a plan, they'll fall into the exact same trap and get their butts kicked this time as well. They decide to go back and report to Gamma as 6066 thinks about John's powers and questions why she's so weak. Alpha is surprised to hear 3 of the elite numbers were overpowered and admits she hasn't heard the name John Smith before. 66 bursts out that he's leagues above most skilled fighters and it felt like he could predict their every move. She hurriedly asks Alpha to let her face him again, but the other girls quickly take her out of the room and bid Alpha a good night. Alpha tells Gamma she's assigned Zeta to the search for what they discussed, but the cult seems to be putting up some heavy resistance, so she hopes they can put an end to this quickly and take some time to relax together. As John is sitting on the train, he notices something running beside it before Delta suddenly smashes through the windows. They start fighting and Delta destroys the roof of the train to stop him from using his threads, but he still swiftly traps her in the rubble and is about to repeat his edgy lines, but Delta sniffs him and happily jumps into his arms. Recognizing him, she's surprised to see that he's John Smith and says she's going to report this to Alpha, but John says he's in the middle of a secret mission that can only be accomplished by a super secret elite agent. He mutters that if she reports this to Alpha, his plan might end in failure because it won't be a secret anymore, so he needs her to not report this. He reminds her that any mission he gives her takes priority over Alpha's orders and confirms that she really won't get mad before saying he'll give her something as a reward once she's finished the mission. He explains that if she goes straight from here, she'll find a place called the Lola City and there's a black tower with a big guy named Juggernaut there, so she should go find him. She happily agrees and rushes off. Later, Gamma tells Alpha that they found the remnants of a large battle and found traces of Delta, so she tearfully mutters that Delta never defied their orders. Alpha asks her to try to find her body. Gamma adds that the amount of counterfeit bills in the market is increasing, and at this rate, the citizens will begin to doubt the value of paper money, and the wave of redemption will rain down on everyone, including Mitsugoshi, so they urgently need a plan to eliminate John Smith. Alpha mutters that this isn't just a shallow attempt to take them down. It seems that while they were fighting the MCA, John Smith intentionally sparked a crisis to bankrupt both Mitsugoshi and MCA and take everything for himself. Gatton is informed that the cult is highly concerned about the current state of affairs, so if these counterfeit bills continue to circulate, the cult will suffer severe losses. Gatton swiftly chops off the heads of the men who came to inform him and orders Garter to do whatever he must to find the source of these counterfeit bills. In the city, Alexia runs into Iris and reveals that the library in the school hasn't been rebuilt yet, so she thought it'd be easier to find specialized books in the palace archives. Iris asks if she's going to give up the sword and become a scholar, but Alexia says this is to help her know where to wield her sword, since she's realized she'll always be an outsider if she randomly keeps swinging around her swords. As she's speaking, Iris silently walks past her. Meanwhile, Beta informs Shadow that rumors of the counterfeit bills are already beginning to spread in the royal capital, so they believe the royal family will be forced to take action. She sees that he's taking the notes and continues that because these circumstances can easily lead to inflation, it has already reached a point that it must be addressed at a state level. He mutters that it doesn't make any sense, so she asks if there's a mistake in her report, but he says they should just proceed as they have been. She nervously reveals that they sent Delta to deal with John Smith, but have lost all contact with her as a result, so they believe she might have been killed in action. However, Shadow hurriedly says Delta has merely gone somewhere far away. She admits John is a highly skilled fighter and asks if he would fight him, but he says he has other matters to attend to. As Shadow gets up to leave, Beta reminds him that they have to destroy documents without delay. However, Shadow tells her to read it, and she's shocked by how complex the code is because he's basically a cult leader who's manipulating his minions. He says this uses 5 different languages that he developed independently and agrees to teach her if she can decipher the meaning of this text. Later on, the train, John is informed that they're reaching the MCA checkpoint. 2 men have set up a barricade of sorts to stop the train and start arguing when the train suddenly rushes past them. The man says they're going to go into hiding and might survive if they're lucky. As the train is going, Alpha suddenly appears above it and tells John it's a pleasure to meet him. As they start fighting, Alpha recognizes his fighting techniques and questions why he would do this, calling him Shadow. He says he has forsaken that name and admits he sent Delta to a far-off place. She frustratingly says she wants to be there for him, to support him, but she questions if this means he doesn't need her anymore, so John says they'll all understand that this was the right choice once it's over. She declares that she won't drag him down and starts fighting him. However, Shadow manages to defeat her, and she warily asks him to not leave her as she lands on the tracks. Yukim tells John that they have exchanged all their paper money for the gold, so the coffers of MCA may as well be empty at this point, and the only thing that remains is to cash the authentic banknotes where the public can see, and the MCA will be finished. In time, the issue will spread to Mitsugoshi as well, and they too will not have the funds to exchange all the bills circulating in the marketplace, and the government will have its hands full as it attempts to quell the chaos. That will be their chance to destroy all the evidence and vanish without a trace. She admits they never could have succeeded in this plan without his help. She reveals that when she was young, she lived in her village with her mother. The powerful clans were in constant conflict to claim the crown of a great hero, and the weaker clans like her Spirit Fox clan were at their mercy. In their quest for mercy, they attempted to deepen their clans with the like-minded clans whom they were allied with. The powerful clan of the Great Wolves and the wise clan of the Spirit Foxes were chosen to marry in order to strengthen their alliance. She, the daughter of the only Spirit Fox to have 3 tails, and Getten, the son of the Great Wolves patriarch, were chosen. They both had love and respect for each other, and it was a happy time, but then strife broke out between the 2 clans. Their village was caught in the crossfire and destroyed, and the wisdom and strength of the lesser clans amounted to nothing more than helplessness. Getten revealed that he was the one who had caused all this and killed Yukim's mother. He told her to pledge fealty to the cult and accept their power for herself, and attacked her as well when she refused, repeating that if he doesn't take from them, they will take from her. After that, Getten became Yukim's solo arch-nemesis. She ended up as a prostitute on the battlefield, but she needed wealth and power, so she used everything she possibly could until she found herself in the lawless city and climbed to the top. She declares that her true objective is to not build herself a fortune, it's to find Getten and take everything he's built up for himself. She says she's going to settle this once and for all, and hopes he will wait for her return, trusting in her success. Civilians see that bank employees have been going around the branch offices, redeeming their money for gold all day. They realize the rumors really were true, and these bills have just turned into worthless pieces of paper now. Garter admits to Gettin that they still haven't been able to figure out where the counterfeit bills are coming from, but the U-kind is the one behind it, since a Snow Fox Corporation was used to transport the gold coins that had been exchanged. Gettin suddenly senses someone near them and orders Garter to stop the carriage. Sitting in front of a fireplace, Alpha sadly mutters that Shadow has ascended to heights only he can reach, so he doesn't need her anymore. Gamma informs her that the MCA have forced closure of all their storefronts, bringing the citizens' unrest to its peak, with riots breaking out at each of their bank branches. She admits they won't survive a credit collapse if things progress the way they have been, but she says they can surely put us to the cast-off if they provide something to give the marketplace a sense of security. However, Alpha tells her to forget it because it doesn't matter anymore, because HE is the one who has caused all this and has forsaken them. Shocked, Gamma insists that Shadow would never abandon them, but Alpha says it seems they have failed to live up to his expectations, and this is the result. These guys are overblowing this way too much. An assistant enters and informs them that they found solid evidence that Gettin is leading an operation for the Cult of the Diablos, and has been conspiring to circulate counterfeit bills in order to bankrupt Mitsugashi. Alpha suddenly realizes the truth. She mutters that the cult has been plotting to circulate these counterfeit bills, but they haven't actually done it yet, and the bills currently in circulation are because of Shadow. Beta excitedly rushes in and says she just deciphered the message Shadow gave her. Alpha tearfully sees that hasn't abandoned them after all. After reading his message, Beta sees that he did this all for them, since he used the cult's plot against them so that Shadow Garden could collect a tremendous fortune. With these funds, Mitsugoshi will be able to survive the collapse, and the cult no longer has MCA on their side, making them the only losers in this war. They ask about Delta, but Alpha smilingly says she wouldn't worry as Delta enters the room and reveals that she went on a secret mission. They all happily hug her and say they're glad she's alright. Shadow remarks that he's been going around killing bad guys, but today is the day working overtime doesn't bother him since Yukame said she's not in it for the money, and that means he can keep it all at himself. As he walks into the vault, he suddenly notices that all the gold is gone, as Yukime's assistants hurriedly inform him that they can't get in touch with her, so they're afraid Gettin has done something. John starts manically laughing and tells Gettin he's laid his hands on something very precious to him, but he'll see to that he gives it back. As Yukime effortlessly tortures Gettin, he warily says if he possessed the power of the legendary golden-haired nine-tailed fox, no one would have taken from him or from any of them, but now she's using that power to take from him. Yukime says something changed him, but she doesn't know what did it, and although he's the one who killed her mother, the truth remains that he once saved her village and her life. She says goodbye to him and starts walking away, but he tells her to not mock him, swallows a pill and slashes at her from the back, admitting she should have killed her too that day. However, as he's about to kill her, he's suddenly punched away by John, who says he is only here to retrieve something he deems very precious. John smashes him into the snow and keeps repeatedly punching him, telling him to talk. Gettin desperately says if he had that power, something might have been different. He says he'll leave John as precious and asks him to take care of her, but John kills him and says his treasure is in good hands. He embraces Yukime and heals her wounds as she realizes he was the one, and tearfully thanks him, and John remembers that Gettin said the gold was buried under the snow. Iris arrests Garter while Yukime tells her assistants that John has gone to perform a burial and admits he's a truly compassionate man. In the vault, Alpha approaches Yukime, explaining that the MCA is destroyed and they'd recovered what was needed before the royal investigation began. She reveals that they found something poorly written in Gettin's chambers and believe it was addressed to her. Yukime admits he was never the type of man who could sit comfortably at a desk and always had her write letters. Alpha reveals that the Cult of Diablos was the one who led Gettin astray, so they're fighting to stop them alongside John Smith aka Shadow. She apologetically admits they collected the gold coins to allow Mitsugashi to survive the credit collapse and have also taken over the MCA's outlets. She says they've arranged to work with her, so she agrees and says she looks forward to partnering with them. As Sid is digging, he mutters that he still hasn't found any gold and is getting radio silence from Yukime while Mitsugashi continues to do just fine. Delta asks Sid if he'll do as she says when they're done digging holes and reminds him that he promised, so he agrees on a compromise but reminds her that he's not Santa and won't be able to actually give her anything. She doesn't know who that is, so he explains that Santa is a demon who continued to betray him every year, even though it's not like Santa could magically turn him into a superhero. He reveals that he's about to set off on a journey, remarking that Shadow Garden is probably furious with him, so he'll give him time to cool off and act normally when he returns. However, he admits he has to tread very carefully since he's a loser on top of being the victor. After he's left, Delta continues digging and excitedly says she's found something. Gally and Emo cheerily enter Sid's room so that they can go pick up girls, but they're surprised to not see him sleeping and see VIP tickets to the grand opening of Mitsugashi Hot Springs land on his desk. They wonder what he's doing with these when even rich nobles can't get their hands on them. However, they suddenly realize the odds of their lady hunt succeeding will go through the roof if they show them to girls wanting to go to the resort. They run around with the tickets, but one of the Shadow members asks how they got their hands on these tickets when they were only given out to a chosen few. Gally says they were gifts. The girl, Nu, asks if they didn't steal them or find them lying somewhere, so Imo hurriedly says they took them from their friend, Sid's room. Stunned, Nu realizes he took the tickets we arranged for him and gave them to his classmates. She remarks that she never expected him to send out such a complicated code and wonders what he truly wants from them. She menacingly says she will take their offer into consideration. Later, Alpha remembers how Shadow told them about the dragon's tears and told them to dig through this land before leaving. Alpha and the other members started digging, believing they will finish his unfinished business, and one girl suddenly found a hot spring, so in the end all they managed to do is build Hot Springs Land. Alpha mutters that they gave him 3 tickets, so with Sid and his friend, that leaves 3 spots for them. The girls start arguing over who should go on the date, so Alpha says as it seems like words are useless and begins the 7 shades rock, paper, scissors just so they can suck up to Shadow. Later, Beta, Delta, and Zeta win, but they see that Sid isn't with Gally and Emo. Gally hurriedly says Sid had to cancel, but they're sure he'll be here later, so the girls cheer up again. All the girls still end up going to the resort, and Alpha sees that they seem to be having fun in the typical beach episode every anime needs to have. She wonders if this is what Shadow wanted all along, since they've constantly been in battle, never taking the time to rest for mental or emotional relaxation, so he might have given them this respite out of consideration for their well-being. As Gally and Emo are floating in the water, he wonders if the girls are specifically trying to avoid them, but Emo says it's the opposite, since they're probably discussing who gets the boy. As the girls are in the hot bath, Zeta mutters that she thinks they should rethink what Shadow's objective really is, since what she keeps coming back to are the dragon's tears. She narrates that a kind and beautiful princess used to live in this land once upon a time. One day, she rescued a small dragon. The two became friends and they grew up together, but their happiness eventually came to an end, for war had broken out. The dragon fought off the attackers, but he returned to find the castle in ruins. When he saw the princess shed a tear, the dragon began to cry and hot tears flooded the land, covering the entire kingdom. The princess awoke to find a mysterious spring of warm water, filled with the essence of life, but the dragon was nowhere to be seen. Zeta believes that what their lord truly seeks is hidden somewhere inside this tale. Gally and Emo try to climb up the wall to peek at the girls' hot baths, but smoke is suddenly thrown at their face, and they fall back into the spring like a bunch of losers. The girls suddenly realize the hot spring is reacting to tear. The girls start bullying Epsilon to make her tear up, which causes a water dragon to suddenly rise up. The girls hurriedly suit up and take it down, after which they see golden tears raining down from the heaven. They see that the hot springs actually have magical properties and can improve beauty and health as well as other things, so this is a great business opportunity. Alpha says she's sure Shadow wanted. After that, the girls start selling limited edition grand opening merchandise for the resort, and Alpha smilingly thanks Shadow for the wonderful day off. A girl tells Sid this is all she has since the soldiers took away her coffee and other expensive things, claiming they used it for the war effort. Sid remarks that after leaving the Midgar kingdom alone, he wandered wherever his fancy would take him, and that gave him a chance to take another look at himself, since this trip had after all started as a journey of self-discovery. Until now, in the situations he found himself in, he did what he felt would take him closest to become the eminence in Shadow, but thinking, he never really had a clear image of what exactly that should be. He wonders if he's imagining it or if it feels like something is missing. Roseka 666 suddenly wakes up after having a dream of her father saying he will never forgive her. She mutters that First Castle Town used to be a beautiful city, but it couldn't escape the fires of war, so she felt that if she joined Shadow Garden, she might be able to do something. She's informed that it's time, so she leaves with the other girls, who reveal that number 559 is going to lead the mission today. Later, 559 says the stronghold fell to the Perv faction just 2 days ago, and it's a small castle town that should be of little importance, but the cult secretly deployed their most elite force, the children of Diablos, to take it, so their mission is to find out what the cult is after. 559 asks Rose if she knows why she was chosen for this mission. She believes it's because she knows this fort, but 559 reveals it's also because she received her powers directly from Shadow. Surprised, the others reveal that the only ones in the organization who directly got their power from Shadow were the Seven Shades, and 559 says she too was given power directly by him, since she can't let herself be one up like that. They see Kuadoy the Gale, one of the cult's leaders, among the crowd before he steps forward and inserts a card into a pillar, 666 says this is just like the sanctuary and is shocked to see her mother there as she places her hand on the pillar, revealing the ring of legend that was once protected by the hero Freya. 559 tells them to prepare for combat since the ring is the key, and they're going to retrieve it. 6066 hurriedly asks since her mother is down there, but 559 questions why that matters and jumps towards them. However, before she can attack, 666 hurriedly blocks the attack and questions why she would do this. Koadoi says it's impressive that Shadow Garden managed to find their location, but they shouldn't start their attack with a falling out between allies. 559 throws 6066 away with her mother and says she knew she wasn't worthy of serving their lord, declaring that they will both die by her hand. The next morning, Nu informs Gamma about what happened, so she mutters that they've constantly been interfering with the cult's ruin robberies for a long time now, but the leader still hasn't shown himself, so he must be a very patient man. She sees that he's expended a large number of pawns. Gamma says this will be a good time to send in a large number of reinforcements and orders Nu to have Lambda speed up the organization of troops, but they'll let the call of 6066. She wonders how their lord, Shadow, envisions the end of this game since he must have led 666 to this point on purpose. Meanwhile, Sid sees the situation and remarks that there's surely somewhere in all this where an Eminence and Shadow can step in and look really cool. The inn owner starts working on his breakfast, so he wonders aloud that he might be able to help, but she thanks him for the offer and says she'll be fine. Sid remarks that if Oriana needs a new ruler, Rose seems like the perfect candidate, but she murdered her father. He wonders why she did that anyway and remembers how she looked like she was prepared to do anything back then. He mutters that as the background character and the Eminence in the Shadow, he'll help Rose become the monarch. He decides to prepare for the plan, but some hooligans suddenly arrive at the inn and declare that they humbly offer the good citizens of this town the right to support the government's army. The girl hurriedly says they can't since they took everything she had the other day. As she tries to argue, a guy says he wouldn't mind if she decided to pay them with her body. Sid puts up a fake act and nervously asks them to leave Mary alone. However, they beat him up and throw him out. Mary tells Sid he shouldn't be so reckless and assures him it's fine, revealing that she used to be a prostitute in the lawless city who had to deal with violent customers on a daily basis. She's saying it like that's a good thing. She admits she came close to giving up a lot of times, but was never able to actually do it until she got help from Hachiman. Now she happily says he rescued her too. Later, as Sid is leaving, Mary refuses to accept his payment since he saved her, so he says goodbye and hopes to see her again. As he's walking, he remarks that they made a dashing entrance, showed off their power and made a dashing exit, but he can't let them outdo him. Sid warily admits his plan isn't going to plan and remembers that a fixer is supposed to stand out by not standing out. He overhears the men from earlier in a hut. The guy who threatened Sid earlier suggests that they should pick up a few women as souvenirs on their way out, but he shockingly sees that his friends have died. Sid says he loves the rules of the lawless city since when you want something, you take it even if you have to kill for it. Basically, it means the strongest guy, and he's right, and he's always right. At the inn, Mary depressingly mutters that this is hopeless since she can't even stock up for tomorrow, let alone this month's rent. She wishes she'd swallowed her pride and asked Sid to pay up since after all this, she's gonna have to sell her body again. However, she suddenly hears something drop in front of her door and opens it to see a bag of coins, happily realizing that Shadow has been watching over her all this time. Meanwhile, Koadoi shockingly calls 559 a monster since he defeated her reinforcements, all of whom were first children. He sees that even her magic power can't last forever since she's been fighting without rest for 3 days and 3 nights. He tells her to cheer up because he won't just kill her, he'll torture her to death along with every member of her team. He believes that if he plays his cards right, he can rise above Perv Ashat since he's obtained the key in Rose now. However, 559 happily sees that he's come to save her again. Her body starts glowing with power and her arms heals itself before she effortlessly slashes through Koadoi. The other two see that they've been healed as well and wonder what Shadow is doing here. 559 reports that 666 has betrayed Shadow Garden and asks him to give her the order to eliminate her. However, the others say she was only trying to save her mother and question if they need this key so badly that they would stomp all over their friend's feelings. Shadow suddenly sees in a newspaper clipping that Rose has announced her marriage to Chancellor Ashat. He suddenly starts glowing with power and declares that Rose's betrayal will be punished and she will pay, which makes 559 happy. As Shadow is rushing through the air, he questions if she killed her father to just become a supreme tyrant and remarks that if his Eminence in Shadow shtick is ever going to get anywhere, he needs her to be the next ruler. Lambda takes some members to the lawless city where Chai and Omega ask if these are all the reinforcements they're getting, but Lambda says she's heading straight back to organize the next batch, but there was something she wanted to confirm with the people on site. Omega says it may be harsh to call what Rose did a betrayal, but Lambda says the fact remains that what she did put her teammates in danger, and she was her instructor, so if the organization is to render judgment on her, the least she can do is carry it out herself. However, they inform her that that's not possible since Lord Shadow himself has decided to handle this matter. Lambda is about to say that's too extreme, but she stops and she admits no one in the world can ever defy his magnificent will, so Lambda wonders if there's nothing they can do. Sid is getting ready to use his teleportation skills, but he runs into Epsilon outside the estate and goes in with her because he's transfixed by her fake chest. She explains that in this country, they respect anyone whose art warrants it, regardless of race or rank, which is why she's allowed to walk right into the palace whenever she wants to, and why she, his #1 student, is accompanying him. She reveals that they're keeping an eye on the target while not letting her roam free, and none of their spies have been discovered so far. Duke Ashat meets Epsilon and asks if she was scheduled to perform for them at their luncheon today, so she confirms this and says she's planning to debut a brand new piece. He says he looks forward to hearing it and reveals that Rose won't be attending today's luncheon since she isn't feeling well. She reveals that Sid is her pupil and says they have a secret relationship. He apologetically asks if he has a secret pass and reveals that they had to change policies. Epsilon decides to leave, but he says they would like for her pupil to play a piece for them since they're all curious about how skilled her apprentice is. As Sid sits down in front of the piano, he mutters that he will exact vengeance for the blood tax the people are owed. As Sid starts playing, the audience is stunned by how good he is, not noticing their jewelries disappearing. As Shad asks for his name, so Epsilon says he's still in the training stage and will set foot on the public stage, all in good time. As Epsilon is talking to Asat, Sid notices that he has the ring in his pocket and silently retrieves it. As Epsilon and Sid are sitting in a room, Sid says he'd like to roam the palace, so the maid, Margaret, excitedly says she can show him all the best places. After seeing her chest, Sid instantly agrees, and as they're walking, Margaret says she was really touched by his performance earlier. Sid really is the Riz Lord of this world. He remarks that it's because the performance techniques in this world are pretty underdeveloped compared to Japan. She says she heard that the Earl Patron himself has his eyes on Sid, so if he becomes his personal pianist, he's guaranteed at least 100 million zeni per year. Sid remarks that if he becomes a musician, he won't have to count on handouts for every gig, so that might actually work. She says she'll do everything in her power to support him, so Sid asks where Princess Rose is now since she is her maid. Margaret mutters that she personally detests Rose. She reveals that she was her maid before she left the kingdom and Rose was kind and intelligent, but their kingdom is in shambles now, and it's all her fault. She says Rose's location is a secret, so she can't tell him, but a hint might not hurt. She instantly reveals that Rose is locked up at the top of the West Tower. A weird-looking castle guard asks Sid why he's strolling like that and starts telling him off before declaring that he and his sweet little Maggie are deeply in love. Every day they come to this garden to meet, but she's so shy that she runs off without saying anything. However, that's all the both of them really need. As he's rambling, Sid is surprised he can't tell anything from her reactions. Upon seeing Sid, Rose tearfully rushes forward and embraces him. He reveals that he came here with a pianist he knows and says he wants to talk about her marriage, but she says there's nothing to talk about. She asks him to not think about her too and to forget that she even exists, but Sid says he can't since they're all the same after all. He admits no one understood his dream just like they did for her, so he thinks he knows better than anyone how she feels. Rose says she will understand his dream even if the whole world doesn't, because his dream is the most precious thing there is. Sid reminds her that she stabbed her own father and says he won't ask why she did it because he believes she did of her own convictions to stay true to the path she took, but he questions why she's doing something perverse now after all that. He asks why she would give up now, so she says she has nothing to tell him and asks him to forget about her. Later, Ashat tells Rose he received a report that she had met a visitor, so she asks if it looks like that. He sees that she looks like she was crying and is about to offer a hand to comfort her, but she asks him to refrain from touching her. Ashat starts choking her and says her attitude needs improvement, ordering her to mind her behavior because her mother, Queen Rhina's life depends on her affability. She agrees and calls him sir, so he says they have a wedding to plan, hearing which Sid mutters that he'll just have to switch to plan B and wonders if this was the wedding ring. Epsilon tells 559 she plans to promote her to a position directly below the Seven Shades, so she shouldn't let her down this time. She admits they don't know what Lord Shadow is planning since there is a view of the world that only he can see. However, she's worried about the cult using the ring, which could lead to disastrous measures. When Sid returns from his bath, Epsilon starts massaging him and 559 offers him fruits, remarking that even undercover, he's a vision of magnificence. He tells him that thing will be taken care of sooner than expected and is practically over, surprising them by how easily he handled the situation. Meanwhile, Mordred asks Ashat how things are progressing, so he says they haven't had a single problem. Mordred says if they can take back the Black Rose's power, their authority within the cult would be unshakable. Ashat says there's no need to worry, because he always carries the Ring of Succession with him. Mordred tells him to make no mistakes, and he too will be granted a seat in the rounds, after which Ashat arrogantly asks Shadow Garden what they'll do when the ring, Rose, and the kingdom are all in his hands. Cid remarks that Rose's hands are tied because Ashat has taken her mother hostage, but he's wondering why that would bother her so much after how far she has come, but it can probably just be chalked to Rose's aesthetic. The solution is simple. He'll just have to free Rose's mother to unshackle Rose. Margaret tells Cid that she couldn't sleep a wink after he disappeared while they were together, and there's a creepy guard following her lately, so you can hardly tell the castle grounds are safe anymore. Epsilon appears on Cid's other side, and they start kindly arguing with each other about their intentions with Cid. Later, Cid tells Epsilon the people here seem unconcerned, so she says the nobles detest violence and adore the arts. He says he wants to destroy it, so she says it's far too dangerous, but if they want to destroy it, then she bows in front of him. Cid smilingly remarks that she's making such a big deal out of it when he just wants to check out some flowers. While strolling around the estate, Cid remarks that this has turned into a soap opera from an Isekai fantasy, so he has to find a way to course correct back to that 60 p.m. time slot. He mutters that if Rose learns of the truth, her rage will drive her to fully awakening as the tyrant he knows she can be. Margaret enters Rose's room to give her tea and leaves without saying anything, so Rose tearfully admits she'll never smile at her again, but she still hopes to save her mother for her father's sake. She turns around to shockingly see Shadow sitting on the couch and asks if he's here to kill her because she returned his kindness with betrayal. However, he tells her to come with him because he'll show her the truth. He shows her that Ashat and her mother are actually working together to take advantage of Rose, seeing which she collapses in shock, even though it was obvious to everyone but her. Later, Rose tearfully questions what the point of it all was and declares that she wants to go back. She sees Cid playing the piano in front of her and asks him to run away with her since he is the only one who has stayed with her through it all, when she killed her father, betrayed her organization, and was betrayed by her mother. Cid starts quoting random stuff and questions what she sees in this world lit by the moon. Stunned, she picks up the ring lying on the seat. As Cid takes off his clothes to go take a bath, he realizes he lost the ring and mutters that he spends money as fast as he makes it. He believes he's done what he could for Rose, so it's up to her now. Epsilon offers to wash his back, and Cid mutters that in 3 days, the sleeping lion will wake at the wedding. Ashat remembers how the blasted king transferred ownership of the ring to Rose to save her, so he will have to marry her in order to use it. Shocked, he sees that the ring is gone and desperately tries looking for it before Mordred informs him that the 12th seat at the rounds will be his once this ceremony is over. Ashat agrees and decides to delay the exchange of rings. At the ceremony in front of everyone, Rose pronounces Ashat guilty of everything he's done and says she refuses to give up on true love, swearing on the ring her father left her. She puts it on, which causes a recorded video to suddenly start playing in the city, in which Rose's father Jerk reveals that he is being drugged by Duke Perv Ashat, but even if he is personally defeated, he will leave this kingdom in the hands of his daughter, Rose, who is going to be the new leader. He tells Rose the future of this country is in her hands, and says he loves her before ending the video. Rose pronounces Ashat guilty and brandishes her sword, but his and Rose's mother's heads are suddenly slashed off as Mordred says these incompetent allies were more trouble than foes. He could just done that before all this went down. He introduces himself and suddenly opens a door, revealing that he just needed the conditions to be right. A gigantic black rose appears in the sky before Mordred calls down Archfiend Ragnarok and orders it to crush everyone. However, Shadow suddenly appears in front of them and cuts off Ragnarok's arm, declaring that these things are unsightly. Alpha receives a report about the Black Rose but believes it'll be alright since HE is there after all. Mordred is impressed he managed to injure Ragnarok and asks who he is, so all the guests in the church reveal their true identities, and they simultaneously declare that they are Shadow Garden. Rose also rushes forward with them to fight while Shadow starts battling Ragnarok. Beta and Epsilon face Mordred and see that he's bragging about a weapon he stole before calling him a coward. Beta says the wisdom he has been granted is anything beyond what he can comprehend, and they start fighting. Rose meets Margaret and orders her to do whatever she can to rescue the citizens, so she agrees and says she'll take care of everything here. Rose orders her knights to take care of the citizens as well and gets ready to face Mordred, but she's shocked to see him lying on the ground in his beaten up state. Bro looks like they threw him under a running train. Not knowing when to give up, Mordred declares that he still has Ragnarok under his command. He starts explaining how different realms coexist at the same time and says there are still unanswered questions about the human race since they are the only species with this much intellect that have managed to thrive. He reveals that there was once a kingdom called Atlantis that vanished without a trace, and that the demon Diabolos originates from a creature that was from another realm, the First Realm. He says the Black Rose is an artificial gate to another realm. It was open once before, and magical creatures continue to spill out of the gate and devour humans in their path, but they came to their rescue by closing the gate. Thus, Rose's blood should have been offered to the cult when she was born, but the foolish king refused to do it, so she can see how his ridiculous parental affection destroyed Oriana. He says she and Oriana will soon be destroyed by Ragnarok, so they will rebuild it, but he's suddenly crushed by Ragnarok's giant hand. Mordred watches in shock as Shadow swiftly destroys Ragnarok. Mordred believes this is just a nightmare and absorbs Ragnarok's body, so Shadow sighs as the monster rises up again to fight him. Mordred and Shadow start fighting, but Shadow flings him into space and declares that he's realized what he must do. He slowly steps forward and declares that he is atomic, causing a massive explosion, which all the Shadow Garden members watch and all like it's a fireworks show. Floating in the air, Shadow says it's not so bad to take the muscle-headed brute approach every once in a while. However, he suddenly notices a black hole behind him and curiously touches it before getting sucked in. A girl gets up, muttering that she must have fallen asleep. She remarks that there was a boy she despised. His grades were below average, his looks were exceedingly ordinary, and there was absolutely nothing memorable about him, and yet looking at that moon reminds her of him. She suddenly senses someone near her and braces herself, but sees that it's nothing. She turns around to see a menacing-looking man in front of her before suddenly electrocutes her from behind. Later, the girl Akane wakes up to see that she's shackled in front of a group of men who say their client wants to do the honor of personally killing her, so they're supposed to bring her alive. The man from before walks forward and angrily starts choking her, declaring that he can't get it out of his head. However, the roof of the warehouse is suddenly destroyed as Shadow lands in front of them. The man desperately recognizes him from before and rushes forward to fight, but Shadow slams him into the wall and introduces himself as Shadow, he who lurks in the shadows in order to hunt the shadows, seeing which Akane recognizes him since the second time he's saved her butt